This is an HR program on demand, a living seed capsule of work life and workplace coming live from a rooftop in Stockholm, Sweden. It's me, Ann-Marie Andrich, and
me, Katarina Berg.
A vodcast, if you like, on HR straight across the counter, sponsored by HR The Real Deal, HR by HR for HR.
Hello, Katarina.
Hey, Ann-Marie.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Why don't we talk about the new leadership today?
Yes, sounds like a plan.
I think we should, because there is a lot of talk about the new leadership nowadays, especially in the COVID-19 crisis. What it is it new? Is it not new? What is it, right? Let's start with the first question. What would you say are the new demands on leadership and organization today that is put on the world?
First of all, I'm not really sure if they are new. I think there is good leadership and I think it's bad leadership. And I think it kind of portrays itself the same way. Hard word, portrayed itself.
It is.
Yeah. No matter what times it is. But I think there is one thing that I usually say, which my team is quite tired of hearing, is that, hardship or tough times or unpleasant, events will really define who you are, both as a leader, as a person, as a team, but also as an organization. And I think we have seen that, and I think there is a lot of things to learn from that, but I'm not really sure if they are new. The thing that everybody is talking about, which is in the part of the world where I sit, in the companies that was already there for one reason or another, where everybody is now saying who did most for your digital transformation. Was it the CTO, the CIO, or was it the COVID-19? I think it's a combination of that, but I always think that the technology is the enabler, and then people will pick it up when they're ready to go or when they are forced to go. And back to leadership, if you drive that bus back, then I think it's important to just, yes, there are a couple of traits that you need to maybe use a bit more under uncertain times, but not necessarily that they are bad when it's not forced working from home, or when we are in a crisis, or when people are actually scared for their lives, or for their own life, or for their near and dear ones, or when you have to figure out things that you always did face to face. How do I now do that? How do I teach, or how do I touch, or how do I come right through a screen in a way that I didn't have to figure out? Then it was just a complement. Right now, I think it's the only tool you have in the toolbox, almost. So I think those are the things that you have to maybe not dig deep, but at least take time out to reflect what works for you, for that specific event, for those recurring meetings. How do you plan? How do you strategize? But also, how do you make sure that that everybody is okay? And when it's okay not to be okay, how do you do that over screen too?
Right. Interesting. And I think you are obviously, Spotify as a company, you are global. Mm-hmm. So you have people all around the world, and obviously your leaders and managers are also, scattered all around the world. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering now, when the crisis hit a few months ago, did you perceive a changed way of leading, or was this this is day to day for us because we are a global and diverse company?
I think it would be ignorant to say that we were all prepared and we saw that coming, or that was how we led already then. I don't think so. I don't believe so. That is rewriting the history, and we can all do that, right? Especially if we come out fairly okay on the other side. But if we're going to be honest and also a bit serious about it, I think a lot of us took for granted, including myself, that the way that we led, no matter if that was only okay, that was how most likely I would lead for the rest of my life. Doesn't mean that I'm saying that I don't do trainings or touch up or, read up or trying new things. But you don't have to be complacent for also going halfway back home and think like this really works for me. And here I think that in that comfort zone are a couple of good things to remind yourself of too. Whatever comes natural for you will be good, right? Whatever traits that you have, if you remind yourself why you are in the position to lead other people. And then if you have really strong, smart, highly motivated people, is it that much leaning in from my side, or is it more about communication? And I think that is a couple of things that I think is not new, but that became much more either urgent or relevant or important during these times. I think, being present in a way is much more important because before you could go into the trap of thinking that you were present. For instance, if I came in 60% of my time to the Stockholm office where I'm based, I felt that I was present, but only for the people here, right? So I might have been a semi-good, or in best case, a quite good, manager or leader for them. And now it was like leveling out the playing field. But I think it's actually much more equal now. So when you have a meeting where 50, 60, 70% were in a room, and then some people joined by Hangout or Zoom or Teams or whatever you call it or whatever you use, they had a feeling that they knocked on somebody's shoulder. And when they finally got it saying, most people in that room had moved mentally somewhere, or you were somewhere else on the agenda. Those small things that you can see in a room where you feed off each other's body language, but also, I think, nuances that are not picked up on screen. When everybody is distributed, it's a totally new game where you can sit in, for instance, my team, you can sit in Sydney and you can sit in Los Angeles and all the other locations in between. And everybody chimes in at the same time. And some of the tools has also improved now. So you can be unmuted, you can talk, or you can raise your hand in a way where your voice, your idea, no matter when it comes, will get as much chance, as much airtime as the people that are majority in a room. And that type of leadership is more facilitation, right? So you just have to be very mindful of what the movements are and who's raising their voice or raising their hand. So I think it's much more facilitation skills. And if you have that or you train that, that is actually easier than remind yourselves that somebody in Sydney wants to say something now, or should we check in? Because then it's more like a talk show host, which is not facilitation, it's more like, so Anne-Marie, we haven't heard from you for a while, right? And then sometimes you also make that person not necessarily all that comfortable, because that's what was not the timing for them to chime in. They didn't have anything to say there. It was just you waking up. The other thing is that I think presence is so much more important now. Not just when you have meeting, you have to check in with people and not write about performance or deadlines or anything like that. It's more of how are you doing, and then sometimes spend your whole one-on-one on how are you feeling, how are you doing, how's your family, where are you? The mental fitness piece of it, which I think also is actually a good thing. It's not a good thing that we are for known reasons. We now also then learn to talk about it a bit and hopefully taking away the stigma. And you as a manager has also had a chance to practice empathy, which I think is the third thing that is really important. And again, it's not new, but we talk about it as it's a new thing. And then I think for me, the walks and talks, been doing that for 17 years now. And so I think we should just, build on that rather than label it as something new. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does for sure. And you said so many good things there. And I think especially if I sort of just comment on the walk and talk, just that question before a meeting to say, do we need a screen? Do we need to take notes? Or do we need to look at the screen? If not, put the sneakers on. Let's have a one hour walk and talk out in the fresh air. I think that is just that question can actually allow you to have a much better conversation maybe than sitting in front of the screen inside, and that is typically one of those many meetings that you have during the day. So if you can exchange 1, 2, 3 of those, then I think you're in better shape.
Yes, I think you are in so many ways, actually. But something happens too when both parties in the conversation are doing the same thing. But what happens is when both are walking, as you say, in nature or in a city, both are maybe most likely wearing sneakers because it's easier, more comfortable to work with. It also even out that playing field, which is your idea, your feeling, where you are, the things that you find to be challenging now. Me coaching, mentoring, listening, or doing active listening, or sometimes pushing back. It is a conversation rather than a manager talking to his, her, or their employee, which is also something that is very good for that dynamic. I think it's more to be mindful and be, instead of things just happening, I think, you have to take conscious decision as a manager right now. But I think the thing that we can't not mention, if we say the new, which is so old, is communication. It's hard, super hard, the hardest, but you have to do that, especially in uncertain time. And those are the lessons, not necessarily what good or bad leadership is or what new or old leadership is.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And I'd like to tie back to what you said on leadership, managing your team remotely. Mm-hmm. You said something about, how do you engage with your team when everyone is on screen? And you said, facilitative questions is better than doing a round table, Mm-hmm. Is this something that you are training or educating your managers on? How do you ask those facilitative questions to make sure that everyone is included and being seen and heard during a virtual meeting? Is this something that you
have as an offering?
Exactly now.
We do. I happen to have a team called the Greenhouse team mm-hmm. here, and it's our learning and development team. And I also happen to think that they are pretty awesome. So like most teams in the organization, and in most organizations too, they switch their offerings, not necessarily overnight, but very close to it. So all the trainings that we have, no matter if it's do it yourself or, self-leadership or leadership trainings or any, obviously they had to be digital or virtual in one way, shape or fashion, right? And they did that, and I think they did it really well. And then you can tweak and you can refine and all that. But there are a couple of oldies that we also thought that we need to do as a Swedish smorgasbord, right? So leading in uncertain times is having a lot of the ingredients that we have in the other trainings, but maybe more as nuggets where we nudge things that we think will help. And other things reminding of this is not necessarily what you need to do also. It's a lot to take on right now. But I think what more so than just our offerings and trainings and how to facilitate and, offerings that we didn't have before because we didn't use Zoom, for instance, like how do you do Zoom meetings and how do you make everybody chime in and how do you go into different rooms? Yes, we have those trainings too now because it was a new tool. Some of it is intuitive and some is not. But I think a couple of things that we have said, and that is part of our band manifesto too. For instance, growth is our mantra. If you're growing in the pace that we are doing, you have to learn to change and adapt all the time. And I'm not talking about just growing, the base of creators or growing the base of consumers or clients or customers, no matter what word you like to use. But I'm also speaking about growing all the band members. It's actually a big, quite overwhelming task to handle. So if growth is our mantra, that also helped us be prepared for what we now are facing. The second thing that is also in our band manifesto is something that I think most companies know which is, change is the constant. And you say this over and over again, change, and here it comes again. And obviously our band members get really tired of that too. But we've been open, we've been transparent, we've been reminding them from before they met us, meaning that we communicated this in our band manifesto, to be open and transparent and honest who we are and what they could expect when they join the company. Then we remind them right through the whole recruitment process of it's going to be a change. And we don't say that because we think that necessarily is great. It's just part who we are and in what phase we are now in our journey as a company growing up. And yes, we have left the toddler phase and we also left the teenager phase, but we're still young adults. It's just last week we turned 12 since launch, meaning that we also turned 14 since the company was founded. But since somebody saw a product, it's only 12 years, right? You have to go back to what's core. You have to go back to your roots. You have to go back to what's relevant for you and what type of leadership will set your organization and your team and your individuals up for success. And then that's where you train. That is where you vaccinate people. The investment in your manager, your leaders, is actually an investment in all the band members, in our case, in all the employees. It's not something that we do for few people that are here to lead. We do that for all because it's such a big part of your work day, your workspace, your mental health, your growth, your development, and all the things that are important for job fulfillment.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Good.
Thanks for sharing. So shall we round this off with the 3 things that you typically say when you round off?
In these days?
Emails.
Yes.
Anything.
Yeah, let's see if I can do them then. Even if I do them very, very often. It is stay safe, stay strong, stay active.
Idemodalje. Hello Katarina. Nej fan, var ju på gång där nu. Såg du det liksom?
Nej, det ska vi inte prata om. Nej, nu tar vi om den. Förlåt. Sorry. Okej, vi börjar om. Förlåt, var det allt?
You said it should be shorter and snappier.
Sorry. I was like, okay, she's going to do this 5 minutes. And I'm like, sorry. And then you kept spitting and I'm like, I couldn't keep myself from laughing.
I noticed. It's very hard to look you in the eye and not start to laugh when you were like, I saw that spit too.
Like twice, I'm like, okay, it's Corona. Spit on.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Sorry.